Computer. Okay, so now this third part is right at the beginning of the third war, and you need to know where the war takes place. I gave you the map right at the beginning here. Just look at the map. You recognize it, no doubt. The Yam Kinneret overlaid upon the topography. It's a topographical map, or at least it shows you the contours of topography. Is the modern the highways? But if you look just to the right of Yam Kinneret, you'll see there's a green patch. It actually goes, it's like south north here along Kvish 98. It's actually Kvish 98. That's in green. That's because that's the Mishur. It's flatland. It's Golan Heights, but it is flat. You could see the border, right? Obviously, toward off to the right with Syria. There's a little DMZ there in between. And if you look just to the right of the Yam Kinneret, you'll see a blue flag and the word Afek. That is, as far as we can tell, the biblical location of Afek, where it's very close to there. And that's where the second battle transpires. The first battle took place inside the area of the Shomron, recalling that the city or village or town, it wasn't a village, the town, the fortress that is Shomron, the walled city, was surrounded. It was in a state of siege. This war happens a year later. The Navi told King Achav on page 435, by the way, in the Quran Tanakh, if you want to open it up, that this was going to happen. And he told him to get ready. Even though the first go around, the Jewish people, the Jewish soldiers, Malchut Yisrael, won handily through their ingenuity, but mostly because God helped their ingenuity, them A, to have ingenuity, and B, to have what's called siyata dishmaya. They didn't just get it on their good looks, because by the numbers, Achav was already prepared to capitulate previous to that moment. Also, the first battle, I should have said before, took place on the western side of the Kinneret, right? Where everybody came down from the north to the south and were massing. They had taken the whole area of the north all the way down to the Shomron, which is the town of Shomron is not accidentally in the Shomron, in Samaria. Here, this battle's happening what today we would call the Golan Heights. And if you look at verse 22, page 435, Vayigash Navi al Melech Yisrael v'yomer lo lech hitchazek v'da ure'ei et asher ta'aseh ki l'tshivata shena melech aram ole alecha. Pshat, the unnamed prophet tells the king of Israel, strengthen yourself, figure out how to be strong, and you should just be aware and see that what you need to do on verse 22, page 435, Pasuk Chav Bet, yeah? Because when the next year comes, Melech Aram will be back. He'll try again. But the Al-Sheikh here, who, by the by, was a great Chacham of the time period of the 16th century, he lived in Tzfat. Tzfat is just off the map, but would be just on the, oh no, it's not just off the map. I'm sorry, it's right there. Yeah, you can see, I thought I put it there. On the left side near 89, right, Tzfat. So he lived in Tzfat many, many years later. And in Tzfat, he wrote this commentary, Pasuk Chav Bet. Amar lo lechit chazek, lo taseh ikar michozek enoshi. You don't have to do, don't make your mainstay human strength. Ki'im shalot tiznach acharei levavcha ve'einecha lalechad acharei Elohei nechai v'chiyotze. The point is, strengthen yourself. It means spiritually strengthen yourself. If you notice a lot of verbiage here. Lechit chazek v'da ure'ei. You'd have to say so many things. The Navi could have just said, he'll be back next year. So why did he tell him get strong, have chizuk? Don't follow other gods. It's in the Shema, in the third paragraph of the Shema, from the Parsha of Tzitzit. Don't stray or follow after, in the sense of wandering, scoping out after your heart and your eyes. V'zeu v'da. And that's what it means, and you should know this in your heart. And see with your eyes as well, because the heart and the eyes are the agents of Avera, essentially. Ki ayin ro'av alev chomed, the eye sees, the heart covets, ve'achar kach evarim gomrin, and then the various limbs carry it out, or the organs carry it out. V'zeu omro v'da ure'ei shehem liba ve'ena et asher ta'aseh be'evarim gomrin. You do tshuva, basically. You should be aware, what's at stake. Recalling that in the first war, the same language was used. You will know that I am God, verse 13, the same page, right? God, the Navi told him, I will save you, you will know that I am God. So after the war was over, he told him the same thing again to get ready. Now, in the interim, during that year, verses 23 through 25, we actually saw this last time, I believe. Vavdei melech Aram, Amru elav Elohei Harim, Eloheihem al kein chazku mimenu v'ulam nilachem itam b'mishur im lo nechazak mehem. They're mountain people, and their God is a mountain god, not a mountain goat, but a mountain god. That's the primitive nature of it. They think the primitive ideas about God is that God is localized, God, right? So we'll catch them on the plain. It'll be a height, but it'll be on the plain. Where's that? That's a fake. Now, here's what you need to do. Centralize authority, sire, in yourself. Instead of it being a coalition of 32 kings and their armies, tell the other kings to go home and bring pachot, means subordinates of those kings. In other words, to be subordinate to you, to unite everyone under one, you could say one network. Better communicate, just like you would say today about an online network, right? Everything will be linked, everything will be connected, one king, one hierarchy. It'd be much easier than having to deal.
It's an allied army.
It's an allied army, but under allied command. Yeah. Welcome. Yeah. So that's what you need to do. Vatatim. Now, by the way, sorry, the advantage, of course, of the allied army or the Axis, some kind of a unit. Oh. Yeah, sorry. You take there. We put some out over there. Okay, whatever. All right, it's all fine. The advantage is better centralized command. The disadvantage is because it's under one centralized command. If something happens to the command, everything falls apart.
Mm-hmm.
Keep watching or reading. Rearm. All that was lost in the horse and the cavalry, rearm from when we lost in our war last year. Rearm. Right? Get the soldiers back, muster new troops. He listens to his advisors, and he does exactly that. We'll for sure be stronger. They chose a fake. Now, why do they choose a fake? I just told you, because it's in an area where it's a plain. But you could see on the map, there's another reason, not just that it is a plain to encounter them, but look at the access to get there. You can take Kvish 98. Now, I mean that anachronistically, obviously, they don't have paved roads. But why is Kvish 98 there? Because it's the easiest place to build a highway today. A road. And in antiquity, no doubt, that's where the road was also. How come? Because you want to bring your troops with the armaments and the whole thing and the horse, the cavalry up and down, just take them flat, straight. And that's the idea. But if you look at the Radak points out that there was something else that was almost like a vestige of a prior time, which may seem a bit strange to us. We've talked previously about the fact that there were internecine struggles between the kingdom of Yisrael and the kingdom of Yehuda, that there were sometimes referred to, not entirely accurately, and here will be a good example, as the northern kingdom, the southern kingdom. North to Israel, south to Yehuda, to Judea. Radak points out, why did they go to Afek? Vayal Afek of Afek livnei Yehudahu. Val pish nimtza Afek benachat bnei Asher, ze Afek haya livnei Yehuda. Ki Asher mimalchut Achav haya. Val pish haya livnei Yehuda. So sorry, I didn't translate. Really, Afeka somehow belongs to descendants of the tribe of Yehuda. It's in the place of Asher. The tribe of Asher really has that northern area. What are they doing there? Yeah. So Ki Asher b'malchut Achav haya. Asher belongs after all to the kingdom of Achav. V'al pi shaya livnei Yehuda yachalu sham el lefi. Next page, back of the page. Lefi shaya lifnei ha'ir azot mishor gadol Chanusham v'kurlam v'nei Yisrael ilachem imam sham v'nei Yisrael chuli kratam. Nonetheless, the idea is that it somehow belonged to Bnei Yehuda. Radak doesn't explain why it belonged to maybe to Bnei Yehuda, but they didn't go into the place of Afek. Rather, they were outside on a great plain. Of course, in antiquity, you recall either there was a siege, which today you call like urban warfare, but it wasn't quite urban warfare. It was just sitting outside. But mainly, battles took place in fields. See under any number of wars throughout all of human history until we get to the postmodern era where everything seems to be urban, up close and personal. Yeah. But if you look at the Ralbag points out, the next source, page 2, Vayala Fekel Milchamayim Yisrael, Echashev she'afek hayale Aram, ulukachua Yisrael b'milchama, ulezayu nimlatim sham ben Hadad v'chelo. It seems to me that Afek really was under the control of Aram, and they took it from the Jewish people already in a war, and that's why later you're going to see Ben Hadad and his army are going to escape to that place. They will run there because they're assuming that they can go in there. That's according to Ralbag. So according to Radak, it's somehow controlled. The town is controlled itself by Bnei Yehuda, and the Ralbag thinks it's controlled by Aram. Just keep that in mind. We're going to need it for later. I didn't just go into geography just for as a nicety. There's something here. Now go. In these sources, Bnei Yehuda it doesn't mention Bnei Yehuda in the text here, exactly. Right? But it should be by rights, by the territory, Northern Kingdom, Southern Kingdom, under the jurisdiction of Achav. Why is Radak even mentioning Bnei Yehuda? What do they have to do with this? They don't live there; they live farther south. So what's that from? Okay. So now verse 27, Uvnei Sel hot pokdu v'chal kilu. So the Jewish people got ready also. Same thing. They counted up the troops. They armed them. They sent them the supplies. They went to greet them, meaning they went to go fight them. When they went up against them, I think I said this last time, if you took the satellite image of the troop encampments, the Jewish people, sum total, looks like two little herds of goats, as opposed to Va'aram Milu et Haaretz, the entire land, as far as the eye can see in all directions, at least on this plain, is all filled with Arameans. So, that means, once again, Jewish people are vastly outnumbered. Now, you should ask, why did they come to the war with so few people, right? So, the first go around, they were totally outnumbered. They knew they were outnumbered, and they won because the Navi told them they would win. This war, they've not been told they're going to win. The Navi just said the last thing the prophet said in verse 22. We just saw it at the end of the last paragraph. Get ready because they're coming in a year. So what do you think? Get ready means bring a lot more people, strengthen yourself. Even on a level of pshat, the level of chazal. No, al-sheikh among the Rishonim. It means strengthen yourself from idolatry. If you want God's help, you better be in a better place in your spiritual barometer. Before you go out to battle again. We don't have any record of any of that happening. And yet again, somehow they came as a very small group. Now you could say, well, maybe that was the sum total of the Jewish army, but the reality is 32 kings and all of their armies. It's a vastly, just numerically, it's many, many more people. We don't know the exact answer to this, but we surmise there must be some reason they came with so few people. And if you look at the Malbim points this out of Yisrael, Alef, Neged Shebetchila Yisrael, on the third paragraph on page 2. Initially, they were in a fortified city and in a mountain. They had to count up and go out to battle, unprotected. Part of the reason why they won the first time was that there was confusion about how many Jewish soldiers there were. Remember, there was confusion partly because all of the kings got together with Ben Hadad to have a liquid lunch. It said they were all totally inebriated, so they're cognitively impaired, at least, right? So, right, WUI, war under the influence. So they can't function. So therefore, they don't really know when they hear noise that this, that, they don't know how many soldiers there are. And it's hard to know because there's not an open field. Everything is mountains, mountain ranges, caves, whatever it is over there. I don't know if it's caves, but at least there's mountain ranges, there's different mountain passes, right? Now it's a plain and everything is open. So now, as Malvin points out, that's one of the reasons they won. He thought there were innumerable numbers of Jewish soldiers. Now they're all here we are. You can see them. They all came. Not as before, there was a small group, a commando group, and then the main army. Yep. That's all there is. It's a tiny little group as against this massive army. So now it can't hide from the view of the enemy as part of psychological warfare. Vayigash ish Elohim, vayomer el hamelach Yisrael, vayomer ko amar Adonai yan asher amru aram Elohei harim Adonai v'lo Elohei amakim hu v'natati et kol ha'amon hagadol hazeh biyadecha v'yidatem ki ani Adonai. Now, what is the prophet saying? Still same anonymous prophet, who we think is we'll find. We heard his name previously, but his name seems to be Michayu, something like that. What does he tell him? You will win because otherwise it's a Chilul Hashem. Simple. It's not your merit. It's nothing you did. It's not for the sake of the Jewish people. It's not the honor of the territory of Eretz Yisrael. It's just because they boasted that somehow God has no power in the plain as he does in the mountain range. So we have to. So God says, I'll prove them wrong, right? But the net result should still be v'yidatem, same refrain, v'yidatem kini Hashem. You should come away with that sense that I am God, and that should be what animates you. Vayachanu ela nochach ela shivat yamim, vayibim shvi'i. 7 days they're encamped one against the other. A tinderbox is waiting for the first shot to be fired. Vatikrav milchama. Vayaku v'nei Yisrael et Aram me'a elef ragli b'yom echad. 100,000 of the Aramean soldiers are killed on one day. We have no idea what the casualties are on the Jewish side. Is it possible it was 0? It's possible. Is it likely? But an argument from silence doesn't mean we should run and say, oh, look, 0. It means we're not focusing on that. Whatever that number was I'm sure very painful for those families. But the point is the innumerable soldiers of the Aramean combined armies, the Axis, 100,000 were destroyed. Afeka el ha'ir, vatipol ha'chomal esrim v'shiva elef es ish hanotarim uven hadad nas vayavol ha'ir cheder bechader. He went into his lahavdil, into his miklat, inside. The survivors ran to Afeka, to Afek. It's Afeka, Afek. Afeka is to Afek. Why did they go in there? They thought they'd find refuge. So now, if it belongs to Aram, we fully understand. That's an Aramean town, so that's where they went to hide. But if it belongs to Bnei Yehuda, that's curious. Says the Radak, verse page 2, the middle of the page in Hebrew. Ki Melech Yehuda haya b'shalom im Melech Aram. The king of Yehuda was at peace with the king of Aram. This is from the old story I mentioned in the first year. If you were here the first year, that at one point, very tragically, the king of Yisrael tried to start encroaching on the territory of Malchut Yehuda from the north to the south. And Malchut Yehuda was not able to properly go to battle against him. So he did what needed to be done politically. He went to find an ally in Aram. And he hired a sworn enemy of the Jewish people to do his bidding, at which point the king of Aram started taking out cities in the north of Israel and capturing them. That was a tragedy of great magnitude. I spoke about it Shabbat Shuvah, about that the pit there from the Asa Basha, those are the two kings, Asa from Yehuda and Basha from Melech Israel. There was a pit there. And it also figures into the story of Gedalia ben Achikam, then Kamakom Lahar. Can't go into it now, but that was Shabbat Shuvah Drasha. And we're coming up on the period of Hanukkah, a great victory of the Jewish people. Sadly, the tragedy of the Hasmonean Empire comes to a crashing end. Finally, at the destruction of the Second Temple in 70 CE. But it is well known, it's in the historical sources, that the reason why the Romans got to the Holy Land was because one Hasmonean king fighting his own brother, the other Hasmonean king, who was really the king, invited the Romans into the Holy Land, and that's when Pompey shows up in 63 BCE. There's a pattern, a very tragic pattern. I'll get the non-Jew to do my bidding in my civil war against a fellow Jew. Lo yuman, but that is what happened. I'm not going to say but that's what happened. Certainly in those days, that is exactly what happened. It's exactly what happened. First Temple period, Second Temple period. Although the First Temple period, it wasn't the proximal cause of the downfall of the First Commonwealth. That came later, but the jockeying. It's just so the Radak says, "Oh, Melech Yehuda was at peace with the king of Aram." It's not even the same king, but there's some kind of pact between Yehuda and Aram, with Yisrael sandwiched in the middle. By the way, it also explains how come no one came to Melchut Yisrael's aid the first time or the second war. Don't call us. We're not coming. We're in a different kingdom, and we could care less what happens to you. You're our enemy. It's hard to even wrap your head around. Therefore, Yisrael, the Israelites, the Jewish people, they needed a great miracle as that. When they were about to go inside, the wall fell upon them and they all died. Either he was among the first of that 27,000 or among the last in that group. He didn't die in that time when the wall fell on them. Everything was from Hashem Yitbarach. That's why no one killed Ben Hadad when he got inside, because they were at peace with him. That's why you'll see what the servants will say to Ben Hadad in a minute. I was thinking, how tall was this wall? How tall was it, and how extensive was it that it crushes 27,000 people? Mm-hmm. So that seems to be the pshat. But already of Yehuda Kiel, who writes the Dot Mikra, I saw this in a magnificent essay by Rav Elchanan Samet from the Gush, from Haaretz. I'm incredibly indebted to him. He has essays on Nach in general, but Melachim Alef has a lot to say. Also by Alex Israel, who I made some recourse to in previous year. He says it's an expression. The wall fell on them doesn't mean necessarily that just like how tall could the wall have been? 27,000 people. That's a mighty tall wall. If the Great Wall of China fell on them, would it have killed 27,000 is a question. But it means that the wall fell on them means that the enemy soldiers of Aram, meaning the Jews from Israel, were able to get into that town. The wall fell on them means it didn't protect them. Yeah. The urban warfare was already underway. But where is the king of Aram? He's hiding in an inner chamber somewhere. Again, Ralbag, it was an Aramean place. Radak, it belonged to Jews who were sworn enemies of the other Jews because they were on good terms with Aram. So keeping that in mind now, look at back in the Navi. We'll learn a little bit here, page 436. So verse 31, Pasuk Lamed Al. Vayomru elav avadav. Hinena shemana ki malchei beit Yisrael. Ki malchei chesed heim. Nasima nas sakim b'motneinu v'chavalim b'roshenu v'neitzei melech Yisrael v'leiched nafshecha. You know what we're going to do? We're going now to give up. Basically, we know that these people are how could they not agree to spare our lives? The truth is, we don't really know if that's what's going to happen. They say, but we're going to try. We'll get dressed up in a certain way, like people in mourning. But maybe some say the rope was the noose. We'll put a noose basically on our head as if it's ready to drop down around our neck, so that we'll dress up as captives should dress, so that when we show up there, they'll look at us and they'll say, "You've given up. Yeah, you're contrite, whatever the word is." So it was. ויחגרו שקים במותניהם, וחבלים בראשיהם, ויבוא מלך ישראל, ויאמרו, עבדך בן הדד אמר, תחינה נפשי. ויאמר, העודנו חי אחיהו. A very strange response by King Achav. They get dressed up in this garb. They're wearing the sackcloth around their waists. They have ropes on their heads. And then they show up. And as soon as they present your servant Ben-Hadad, I mean, that's pretty submissive, yeah? Mm-hmm. Said, save my soul. What's the response? Achav says, is he still alive? He is my brother. He's my brother who did what? Waged 2 wars against me. The first war was because he was going to take everything I have financially and my family members and my children. But now he's my brother? Va'anashim yenachashu. We have that word in our parsha, in our parsha at Shavua a little bit also, at least not overtly, but you have, right, the Gemara is a little bit critical of Eved Avram, Va'inachesh. Nichush is to sense something, but it usually means like to make some kind of a prediction. In this case, it's like the sense of nichishut, like with determination to fix something, to set it before it goes by the wayside, right? They sensed something when they heard it, and boom, they grabbed on it. Oh, they guessed something. Wow, here we are. He just called him his brother. Vayimaharu vayachlitu hamimenu vayomru achicha ben hadad. Vayomer bo kachuhu vayetze elav ben hadad vayaleu al hamerkava. What is going on? They latched onto the fact that he said he is my brother. And what did they say instead? They changed from one verse earlier, Avdecha ben Hadad, Achicha ben Hadad. He's your brother. Everyone's brothers. Shevet Achim Gam Yachad. Yeah. So, okay, why don't you take him? Doesn't literally mean take him physically. It means spare him, bring him along. They bring out Ben Hadad. Ben Hadad goes onto his chariot. Right? So it'd be the equivalent, Lahavdol. They put him into his, what is it, the Chevy Escalade or something? Is that what it's called? They put him, right? You should go in, yeah? Or the open car, they put him in, that he should feel, huh? It's a Cadillac. Yeah, sorry, that's true. Right? But it's an open air Cadillac, yeah? They put him in so everyone could see. V'yomer elav, he'arim asher lakacha v'imeit avicha ashiv, v'chutzot asim lecha v'damasek, kasher sam avi v'shomron, v'ani babrit, all in one verse. What did Aram, the king of Aram, say? I give you back the cities that my father took from your father. I will let you put a market, export. You can market your wares in Damascus. Now we have suddenly political and economic treaty. And as my father had done in Shomron, where you had to buy our goods, now it'll be favorable trade in your direction. And I'll send you, and we have the last words. Who's talking? Vaniva Brit Ashal Cheka, Rav Elchanan Sad points out, that is actually Achav responding. But the Sefer, Melachim Af wants you to see, Lahavdil, like from a literary perspective, it doesn't even say, and Achav responded. He's so happy to accept, he responds, I'm sending you off with a covenant. And he made a covenant with him, and he sent him off. I don't want to fight with you. Thank you so much. I'm so glad we won. Thank you. He didn't say God. See? He didn't say God. He didn't ask for instructions. Instead, he sees a political moment. Now, if everything's happening in a vacuum, you say, well, politics. Isn't it better after you've defeated your enemy and shown your strength? Politics, you say, okay, now let's be in peace. But the strangeness is, who was the one who debased himself in this story? Ben Hadad did it in order to get out of jail free. Why did Achav do it? Because somewhere there, he's afraid of him. Because somewhere there, he sees himself in some way as a parallel. This quote from the Chama Leibowitz sums it up. But in order to understand it, how's our time? We don't have enough time. So I'll just remind you, there's a famous antecedent to this story where a king spared another king. Remember, very famous. King Shaul spared Agag, king of Amalekim. The text in the book of Shmuel regarding Amalek records nothing else but the hankering after the spoils of war. Why then did Shaul spare Agag, it may be asked. It may be answered that he was loath to slay a king. Class solidarity overlooks all other considerations. Note too that Achav, one of the kings of Israel, did not show mercy to just any of his enemies, but only to a royal adversary, the king condemned to utter destruction, calling him brother, even when they both sent their armies against each other to annihilate and exterminate each other. In like manner, adds our great teacher Nechama, the kings of Europe banded together to rescue their French royal counterpart from the French Revolution. They were inspired not by international brotherhood, but by class solidarity, right? What's the name? I forgot the name. I'm sorry. The czars, the Russian czars. The last name was with an R. Romanov. Thank you. Yeah. So there's a whole intrigue there with who's in the Romanov family, how related to this one and to that one, who's saving who, and who got exiled. They're trying to save them. Same thing. Yeah. That you could say by Mimahim Banazeh, not up to the present day, but whenever the aristocracy is looking out for each other, and there's two classes. There's the peoples against the peoples, and there's the aristocracy and everybody else. What do you want to say?
Yeah, and Putin's the same thing now.
Same idea, although they could say they're shared interests. The point here is, even when they're on opposing sides, I can't do to someone else, right? So Rav Chanan Samet actually expands this idea in his essay. He points out that there was this idea all the way from antiquity. He shows even examples in the Bible and other places. The kings were off limits. That was somehow like verboten, like you could go after the subjects, but kings were in a class unto themselves. Every king realized, or queen, if they would do in another king or queen, they would show them to be mortal and not all powerful. And that would ultimately give ideas to their own potential rebels and others, that they could be done in as well.
4 kings against the 5 kings. They were going after each other.
They did, but did you notice the 5 kings don't get killed? They get taken prisoner. By the way, the end, I don't want to spoil how it ends, like the last line, but I will spoil it today because it's germane. The last line is that the exiled king of the Jewish people of Yehuda is sitting in the court in Babylon, in Bavel. Why didn't he kill him? Because much better than killing him is I make you my royal subject and I make you sit in my capital.
Humiliation, yeah.
But it's not just humiliation. It's that the symbol of your the symbol of your independence, whatever you want to call it, your power, is now that you are a part of my menagerie, you could say, almost. Not you might even advise me because you know a lot about politics and military and economy, but you'll sit in my court as my subject, and that will be a signal to all of the people that were your former subjects that they too are subject to me now. Yeah.
The question is, if he were so quick to call him my brother, if he had lost the war.
Right. If the shoe was on the other foot, what was going to happen? Yeah. What was going to happen? Shayla? Okay. Now, it's a Shayla. Now, it's not likely that Achav just did this for politics. There seems to be like there's something else over here about his relationship, Dafka, to this other person. And like, what is it? I got to save my own hide, my own skin. Achav thinks, save my own skin. By the way,
but this other person was the ally of.
But the other person was the Ben Hadad, king of Aram, an ally of Melech Yehuda. That's true. Right. But he was defeated now. He's bested. He lost. He has no troops left. He has no one to defend him. So, but in the end, he let him go. I mean, something over here that's like it's not adding up. By the way, it is not a direct parallel. But just to consider, till today, there is a thing like this, isn't there? Nasrallah Yamach Shemo v'zichro, dead. But when you're talking about heads of state, not as simple for a government to take out another head of state, right. Which is why Iraq's regime going after George Herbert Walker Bush. Yeah. In 93, after the Gulf War, when he went to Kuwait for the ceremony, had consequences, sorry to say, but it was definitely in the room, when George W. went to war in 2003 in Iraq. For sure it was related. And now when Iran went after members of the former U.S. administration, and most recently, now the Department of Justice unsealed that there was a plot to kill then candidate Trump. This is right. So that's a line you shouldn't cross. Now that's not what's exactly happening here. It's maybe a little bit related. To learn the next part, we're going to fly through it. You're going to be upset. And when you're going to feel upset and concerned, like, what? You should be aware that that means you're part of the story. That's all I'm going to say. Introduction. Now we look inside. Page 436 in here, verse 35. From here to the end of the parak, and we'll close with this, you get a flavor for the consequence for all of this, which also gives you a window into what was actually at play. One of the people from among the Bnei Nevi'im is the school of the Nevi'im. From the school of the Nevi'im came prophets, but you could train to become a prophet. In the end, it was still, the Rambam says, Hashem still had to grant it to you. But how did you get there? It wasn't just people walking down the street, I'm a prophet. You had to train. You had to be very, very, pious, and 2, very knowledgeable. Right, exactly. So the Bnei Nevi'im, there were schools of people. They had to be very pious in terms of religious observance and very, very wise in terms of Torah knowledge. That's another discussion. The Gemara does say that, but does it literally mean they were good at business, or does it mean they were unimpeachable and had their own independent wealth? It meant they weren't dependent on others.
Right.
Yeah, they were self-made people in some way, or at least self-reliant. In that sense, they're obviously reliant on Hashem. So one of the Bnei Nevi'im says to another, hit me, like injure me right now. And the other person says, no, I won't injure you. So he said to him, the first person, so the first person said, you didn't listen to the voice of God, which was that you were supposed to hit me. So you're going to leave and you'll be killed by a lion. And the guy left and he was killed by a lion. Strange. Oh, so that's Taka question. But what's your reaction when you read this? Like, that's bewildering. I mean, if you're walking down the street and someone stops you, excuse me, here's a whip, a club, and a knife. Can you hit me? No, I'm not going to do that. Why? Why would I do that? Oh, you didn't? You didn't listen? You'll be eaten by a lion soon. Why? Okay, so that's okay. Now, okay, rega, I'm going to explain. Pasuk Lamed Zayin, vayimtza ish acher vayomer hakeni na. He actually said please a second time. He knows he's saying please injure me. Vayakeu ha'ish hakeu fatsoa. I don't know if you're the second guy in line. The first guy got eaten by a lion. I guess you're gonna listen up. Yeah. Okay. So he hit him and he injured him. Now he's injured. Pasuk Lamed Chet. Vayelach hanavi vayamod lamelech el hadarech vayitchapes ba'afer al einav. So it was that the king was passing by. The prophet stood there, covered himself somehow. Afer means like he put dirt on his face, but it could also be something that is gray. So he grayed it out. Maybe he put something on his face. I think what does Quran say? He put a veil. Okay. He hamelach over. V'hu tzak hamelach v'yomer avdechaya tzad v'kerem hamilchama v'nei ish sar v'yavei elai ish v'yomer shmor the ish hazeh im hipaked yifaked v'hayita nafshecha tachan nafsho ochikar kesef tishkol. So what does he tell him? He screams to the king, sire, your servant went out to the battle, and what happened? Someone came to me, presumably someone of a higher rank. He brought me a prisoner, and he told me, guard this man, and if you let him go, then you'll be the one held to account for letting him go, right? Or otherwise, you'll get paid for guarding him. Shomer sachar lahavdol. I was guarding him, but he escaped. Right? He got away. Same pasuk. Not thinking, answer, direct. Oh, yeah, you just decided. Yeah? You just spoke your judgment. Because you let him go, and the condition was if you let him go, you're going to get killed yourself. So that's what happened. So the king, this is not the first time this has happened in the Tanakh, happens different times. Very famous time this happened previously. Not this exact story, but this exact idea. There's a story involved that is told to the king. The king renders judgment, and then comes what you could say is the aha moment. Verse 41, pasuk memalef, vayimaher vayaser et ha'afer me'al einav, me'alei einav, vayakerotu melech Yisrael ki me'hanavim hu. He takes off the veil, and the king realizes he's talking to a navi. Pasuk membet. Vayomer elav ko amar Adonai yan shilachta et ish chermi miyad v'hita nafshecha tachat nafsho v'amcha tachat hamo. You let him go, a person who I was delivering to your hand, an enemy of the Jewish people. You and your nation. Yeah, your nation will, you and your nation now will be stricken. The king of Israel went home, and he was very, very angry, sullen, angry, enraged. Right? Sar v'za'ef is like you have that expression, something approximating that, I think, in the dungeons of Egypt, when Yosef finds the faces of the angry drinks master and baker after their dreams. So, why are Prenacha something like that. I'm not quoting correctly, but it's something like, I don't have to look it up now. Time frame. What's this about? What's this about? Yeah, the prophet puts the king in a situation where the king has rendered judgment against himself. Very famously, who did that to himself? Remember King David? After the story with Bathsheba, Natan Navi comes. He tells him a story about a man who had a lamb, and the lamb was stolen by a rich man. And what does the king say? The rich man should die. So what does he say? You're the man. You're the man. That's what Hata'ish. His response is Chatati Lashem. I sinned to God. His response is penitential. What's Achav's response? Rage. I don't have any use for you. He doesn't even respond to him. I'm out of here. What's going on here? It's uncomfortable for us to read that prophets saying to another prophet, hit me. No one wants to hit another person. We don't want to engage in violence. Here was the rub. And that's on page 3. I gave it to you here. If you look up at Dvarim, we don't have time to see it inside. You look it up on your own. The Torah says in Sefer Dvarim, if a Navi tells you something in the name of God, you have to listen. And if you don't listen, God will dispatch that person who didn't listen to the prophet. The Mishnah here in Masachet Sanhedrin, a Navi Sheker, a person who prophesied something they didn't actually hear, or what they did hear, or they didn't hear, yeah, then they'll be put to death by a human court. Avala kovesh et nevuato. They have a prophecy, they don't say it. Or if they relinquish the words of a Navi, they ignore the words of a Navi. So the next source, next paragraph, what's that example? Kegon chavraya de Micha, like the friend of Micha. Who's that? That's this story. He told them in the manner, in God's name, I'm telling you, Dvar Hashem, Hakeni na. I don't want to do it. A person who's a Ben Navi, who has access to Naviim, is on a high enough level to know that if literally a Navi comes in the name of God and tells you to do something, it's unpleasant, I don't want to do it, it's violence, it's this, that, you have to do it. I don't want to do that. It's against my instinct. But it's not about your instinct. Huh?
It's against halacha.
The Navi has the capacity to legislate something that is actually against halacha as a hora'at sha'ah, except for avodah zarah. But everything else, the Navi could legislate against the Torah as hora'at sha'ah. That's for sure. The Navi goes to another Navi and he tells him this is an order from Hashem, and he doesn't want to listen. Okay, so I'm not going to do anything to you, but a lion's going to eat you now. Now listen carefully. A lion is going to eat you for not listening to the word of God. Even though what you had to do is unpleasant, a lion will eat you. What is the lion? The king of the animal. Isn't the king the animal kingdom? That's why the Aryeh, the lion, is the symbol always of the king. That's why it's the king of the beasts. It's true throughout Western civilization. That's why the symbol of Malchut Yehuda is the lion, the tribe of Yehuda. It's called in the Torah the lion. Over and over. Yeah. The lion will consume you, and that guy. I mean, I feel bad for that guy. What am I going to do? We feel bad, but he didn't listen. Now, why is that part of the story there? Rav Chanan Samet says King Achav never saw that part of the story. We see that part of the story. That's what the point is that you get into the story, you don't even realize that the Navi's drawing you into it. I don't want, no, but he didn't want to hit him. What do you want from his life? I don't want to, yeah. But that was not actually what happened with King Achav, is it? Lahavdal Fe'avdallah. Could you imagine They found Sinwar and they said, we let him go because in someone's world, he's a freedom fighter. So how could we're not going to kill him because we have respect. He's going to be the leader. We'll give him cash and prizes. By the way, things like that did happen in the past, just so you know. And sometimes people we know and love were complicit in that. I'll remind you what happened in the first Lebanon War in 1982, the actual war, not Operation Lieutenant 78, but in 82, which ended with Arafat Sheikh Tamim, his bones be ground up, as the Gemara says about the enemies of Jewish people. He was sent packing to North Africa, to Tunisia, and he was exiled. He was stayed alive. Even though at one point he was in the Mossad sites and they didn't kill him, they were worried about the repercussions, the whole thing, but they did make a deal with him in the end.
Got the Nobel Peace Prize.
And then he goes Nobel Peace Prize. Wait, Sharon had something to say, I think, and yeah.
The story about the guy who escaped from his whatever, that's a made-up story?
Made up story. It's an allegory, but it draws you in because what happens is, so the Navi now is injured by another person hit him to injure him.
Which was the right thing to do.
Because he was told to do it. But now that guy, who's actually the prophet, who's been the anonymous prophet throughout, masks himself and appeals to the king and says to the king, sire, I feel terrible. I was given a charge. The charge was to hold on to a prisoner until whoever give me the instruction came back and told me what to do with the prisoner. But he got away. What should I do? And the king says, you let him get away, then you should be killed. You have just spoken. Okay, so now he unveils himself and he says to the king, that's you. You let the prisoner Ben-Hadad get away. And the prisoner Ben-Hadad was not just a foot soldier. He literally was the one who orchestrated all of this mayhem twice. Yeah, so when you have, the enemy in your sights, sometimes the act of chesed, by the way, don't you see, isn't it amazing? Speaking about confronting northern threats, how the enemies of the Jewish people, they know when they're in the cheder of the cheder, the inner sanctum, they know the Jewish people, they're really good with kindness. Let's play to their kindness. Let's get under their skin. Let's find a way to have their kindness overwhelm their need to do what they need to do, even if that would have been a kindness to the rest of the Jewish people. You understand? It's a conflict. When we close this chapter, the king of Israel has gone home enraged. How dare you? Which is a code for how dare God? Because I want the war. And where's God in the story? Nowhere to be found, except the Navi's telling him, you think God's not in the picture? Oh, there'll be a third war. The third one, you and the nation Israel, you're not going to come out whole from that. And that, of course, is a future story, but we're out of time for today. So I wish everyone good things moving ahead. And just a preview of the next series, which mysteriously starts next week, if you could imagine. But you don't have to stay. If you had enough, it's enough. You just learned a unit, confronting northern threats. The next series is, I will tell you, spoiler alert, the next section, because it is about a scandal that, a very famous scandal, involving a leader who completely abused his power, juridically and otherwise. And that's sandwiched in this story for a good reason, to show us that the corruption was actually not just in terms of his relationship with God, but even what he thought about his own subjects and his arrogation of powers, etc., his abuse of power, and the way in which he's held to account for that. Okay, all that and more if you come back next week.